but we can go ahead and push it live. All right, there we go. We're live. I don't have an intro video. I keep saying that at some point I will get one. Before 2025, I'll probably have an intro video. Anyway, hello, I'm James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. We are going to be doing kind of the intro tutorial question Q&A thing today. I'm joined by Sheetspwns, otherwise known as Eric Haber, otherwise known as mhabs85 in DFS streets. What's your username in DFS?
People just call me Sheets usually, so
sure.
But the username on DK is actually MB which actually that's the funny story. So that's the initials of my son, who made the mistake of trying to set up an account for himself when he was 16. A bit before I even played on DraftKings. So when I found out about it, I had to get rid of it. I'm like, you know what? Can I just take it over? And they actually let me have that account. So that's how my screen name on DraftKings became MB and on FanDuel it's Cookies Are Yummy, COCESARYME.
Of course. Yep.
But I've just been always known as Sheets throughout my gambling life. So or Eric.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm joined by any one of those monikers that you'd like to use. He owns True DFS and is a major DFS player, high roller. We are going to be kind of doing a little walkthrough today. I thought that it would be useful for people to kind of go through Paydirt through the eyes of somebody who does not use it frequently, aka Sheets, so that I can answer questions and, kind of give some guidance and talk about where things are found. This video for future use is going to be really useful for people who have not seen the site and want to see how they can use it. Even people who do use the site frequently, I'll say things like, oh yeah, there's a game logs like model in the research sheets. And they're like, I've never even seen it. Like, okay, well, now you know that it's there. We should go see it, So that's going to be the purpose of this. We're also going to be going through the NBA and NFL models to talk a little bit about how to use them for the slate tonight and tomorrow. Both of those have been updated with the most recent information, so they'll be usable. So with all of that said, Sheets, I'll let you do your thing.
Yeah, so part of the challenge, as we've discussed offline in several conversations with content from a user perspective, is that there's so many places to go and so little time, and you have to dedicate your time properly, and you subscribe to one site, 2 sites, 30 sites, or whatever, and it becomes so daunting about how to actually get a process going with all these different inputs and just to be able to navigate the site that you like sometimes becomes hard unless you can keep up with the way the site changes, right? Like something as silly as, boy, oh boy, I'm used to getting my projections in this drop down. Where is it? And there's probably a good reason why it's somewhere else now. But it's become very challenging from a user. So I thought it's always kind of helpful when I kind of try to learn a little more about how other sites operate and how I can best use them to just kind of have the site owner just kind of like watch me fumble through it, because I actually made a video for James about my actual process. And it's just because I'm just so muscle memory trained to go to certain places, click this, click, and I can do the whole thing because I know where everything is. Okay, but that doesn't mean that's optimal. That doesn't mean that's the best way to do it because I have access to all these sites. I have access to all this data, and I know that I have access to all this great stuff, for lack of a better analytical term, on Paydirt. I just don't know where to go and like how to use it. And so, I mean, I would get on here. Okay, let's say that I was, and we have to talk about what type of user everybody is, right? So I'm the guy that has a job, that has other stuff, but I'm willing to spend an hour, for real, whether it be an hour building lineups or an hour absorbing content and then another hour building lineups. So I've got an hour. I don't regard this site as a place where I would go like in the middle of the day, though. You know what I mean? Like it's like when do the models even get posted? I mean, usually in the afternoon.
So models are always posted at anywhere between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Eastern. First run of any daily model is posted right in the morning.
So when I'm talking about models, I mean, okay, so let's take NBA just for example. So I would just go to models, NBA, and then you have this, all right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this, and only because I know now that my initial thing, because my first instinct is always to look at projections, I would just go to NBA DFS range of outcomes, okay?
Yes.
And then just kind of operate that way. But forget that for a second. So all these other things, I presume that if I go to NBA DFS contest sims,
yeah,
that this is a simulator of some kind. Now, again, you don't mind. I mean, I use Saber Sim, I use other sim products, whatever. It's all the same type of idea. But so what this is doing now, I guess, is it's loading the data, or what's it? Okay, so right now it says load reset data, run contest sim. So is this going to run sims based on the projections on Paydirt? Is it going to ask me to upload my own, some combination? Am I doing something wrong? Like, where am I right now?
So the contest sims run off of Paydirt baselines. And what they're doing is on the back end, the data that's actually being loaded is coming from the database. It's loading what's called seed frames. And I talked about this in another YouTube video where I was explaining what the contest sims are. You can find that over on the YouTube, over at Paydirt's YouTube. But seed frames are basically the contests that have been simulated in the back end during the production of the NBA models. So in my backend script, when I run all of the range of outcomes and everything like that, part of that update process is creating the data that is going to feed the simulated contests in this model. So everything is coming from the back end, and then the only thing that is actually happening on the front end is the simulation of those created contests.
So nothing else has happened here. So I am like just kind of ready to go here. So if I were to hit, say, large field, oh, this is interesting. So how sharp is the field? We'll put above average. And I guess there's nothing else I need to do except run contest sim.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
So while this is happening, so it's running sims based on the Paydirt range of outcomes, which is your speak for projections, right?
Yes.
Based on your projections on the Paydirt ownership, and similar to the other types of sim products, they're going to sim this contest 10,000 times and provide a list of lineups, I presume, that are best fitted for the types of contests that I indicated, and that would be right here, large. Okay, so large field. So when this finishes, I presume, again, I'm just guessing, that, as I literally never used it, that it's going to show me like a bunch of lineups. Ooh, look at that. That I might or might not want to throw in here. Okay, so now this is a table. Okay, so I am guessing. I'm looking at these numbers here.
And over on that right side, do you see that little expander button?
This guy?
Yep.
Okay. So what I am guessing before I even do anything, all right, so I know what projection means. I presume this is the median projection for this line.
Yes.
GPP projection, I am guessing, is some adjustment for ceiling of some kind that this lineup might produce. Like this might be the ceiling projection of the lineup. Is that close?
It's actually the mix between the projection and what score that lineup had when it won the GPP in the simulation.
Oh, okay. Fantasy. That's in my fantasy world. What's this gonna score?
That's what it scored when it won the simulation. That is the actual winning score of that lineup in the simulation.
Okay. Now, if I were able to scroll to the right, which is always an issue for me, then that would show another column, which would be the amount of times it wins.
Yep. How often it won the GPP that it was simulating in.
Okay. Now this, I'm just going to guess here. So this is and I've only seen stuff like this before. So this is kind of like a ranking that's been re-ranked. So like the number one lineup is probably, I'm guessing, the one that has the highest projection.
No, actually, that's just an index number. That's not even anything important.
Okay, that's so funny. And you know what? If it didn't have something important, I guess we'd have a thing on the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny. I just figured that was this is when other sim products, I'll see this ranking system. Okay, so the ones I want rated by ROI are these, but they're actually not rated number one when it comes to actual projection. Okay,
right.
That's an index thing. We just don't even have to worry about that.
From a technical standpoint, that is the index number of the lineup in the actual seed frame sitting in the back end. Okay. From a technical standpoint.
Okay, so now we have this. Mm-hmm. It has the stack thing if we care to look at it, and now we have this. Now I have to uncollapse this because I want to do something else with it, right? Yeah. So first thing is I could. What does this mean? Export full frame. I'm guessing that means export the lineups.
Yeah, you can export every single lineup that came out of the winning contests.
Like this thing that I made. If I hit, what do I do?
It's probably just running an update right now.
Oh, so if I hit export full frame, how many lineups would I imagine is going to be produced into a spreadsheet? Is it going to be 5,000? Is it going to be 150? Is it going to be 10,000 or somewhere in the middle?
If you ran a large contest, I'm pretty sure it's 10,000 on the back end.
So if I hit export full frame, it's going to give me an Excel spreadsheet with 10,000 lineups.
Yes, the 10,000 lineups that were used in that contest. Yeah.
Okay, and these are going to be rated. Now, these are ranked by what? By ROI or by...
So those are ranked by the amount of times that they ended up winning the contest. It's not a calculated EV. It's not a calculated ROI.
Win count.
How often it actually won the GPP that you were simulating out.
All right, so let's see what this looks like. So we export the full frame, and beautiful. So now, what you could pick as many of these as you want, mm-hmm. and put into your lineups. You could also re-rank these, right, by whatever you want. Now we've already learned that fantasy is the amount it scored when it won. GPP projection, what was it again? The mix of the
projection and the score that won the GPP. That right there.
Score that won the GPP, and this is just win count. Yep. And if you feel like for whatever reason ranking it by ownership or lower ownership or by salary, you could do that. Okay, great. And so I would. There's a lot of things you could do with this, but what I would probably do with it is decide to include these in my pool of lineups. Now you can't. We can't export them directly to DraftKings from here, but you just put it into a CSV. This is perfectly fine. Okay.
And if you did want to have a set that you could export into DraftKings, in the NBA ROO, there's actually an optimals tab that also uses the seed frames to create kind of pseudo optimal lineups. Okay. We'll talk about that when we get there, but those, when you export them, do actually have the IDs, so you could just upload straight to DraftKings if you want to.
And if I wanted to kind of screw around, I could change this to sharp and qualitatively take a look and see what the lineups look like differently. Now you can't at this point, I guess, do other funky stuff like doing min uniques or anything like that. At least from this point. Okay. Okay. So that's that.
Well, no.
That's not. Okay. All right. So that's not that. All right. So what do we got?
So the winning frame statistics are going to tell you, based on the seed frame, the min, average, and max numbers for salary, projection, ownership, fantasy, and GPP projection. So the minimum salary for any lineup that won the GPP is there. The max is also there, 50K. But then the average is the one that I like to focus on. So any lineup that is below $49,371, that lineup still has a chance to win, but you should probably stick between average and max. If say that you're building in SaberSim or at the Solver or at Lineup HQ, wherever you build your lineups, being able to set thresholds based on this information is makes it really easy to create large batches of good lineups if you wanted to use an optimizer as well. Ownership, same thing.
Yeah, that's pretty helpful. I mean, I don't know if you remember when I was going through my process, one of the things you can do is, again, is if you're trying to make changes in your lineups, to give yourself a little sanity check to make sure that you're not sacrificing too much in projection integrity. In this way, you at least, like I said, if you can keep the average salary to 49,370 or whatever, 494 or whatever,
Right.
then based on your sims here, you can make changes and still be in the ball game. That's pretty helpful actually. Fantasy we did, GPP we did. Oh, we can look at the exposures over here. Okay, I was about to ask that.
Yep.
So,
and this is what I consider to be the most important part of the contest sims. As Neil had mentioned right here, for NFL this year, he's looked at the contest sims as a way to find edges on the player level. These aren't really lineups that we should be looking to play correct. For the most part, yes. So you can export, as Sheets did, and then play around with all the lineups. And actually, if you towards the top of this, there's a second tab that you can go and download the entire seed frame, and that will give you 500,000 lineups to play with. So if you scroll up, and then go to data export.
Oh.
And then you say, how many lineups do you want to you don't have to display those. If you hit prepare data export right now, then it will actually download and create a CSV of 500,000 lineups that are being used to feed this. So you can export that optimal set, and that'll give you 500,000 lineups to use.
And so right now it says export optimal set, and I'm curious to see how these are. What are in the top columns here? Let's see. You get the same. Let's take a little bit, just because it's.
Yeah, this one's going to take a sec because it's a lot of lineups.
Oh yeah, okay, great. Yeah, but okay, so this is not. It doesn't give the same.
So this is the seed frame that has not been simulated.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But this is 500 lineups sorted by projection, like the best projection to lowest. And so you can do with this a whole lot of different stuff. If you wanted to take these lineups and sort rank them based on projection and ownership, if you wanted to simulate your own contest, if you have your own like simulation technology that you wanted to use, if you just wanted to see a lot of information about the players that are used in the lineups and see what their frequency is to project ownership, you can do a whole lot of different things. This is an export for super users.
Now, sorry about that. Now, let me go back to contest sims.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to the beginning. So here's one of my questions. If I wanted to use the sims here, but use my own projections, can I do that?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Only because naming conventions are a son of a bitch.
I know that very well.
So last year, before I refactored this, what I was doing was actually creating the seed frames on click and then simulating them after that, right? So I did not hold them in a database. I loaded them here based on the projections, created the seed frames, and then simulated over them. The problem was that took a lot of time, right? That takes about 30 seconds to just do a small field, right? Whereas right now, if you run a small field, it takes about 8 seconds.
Do you get people that do that? Do you get people that just come right in here? We have to ask the people that are watching.
Yeah.
They actually just come in here, run contest sim, fire lineups, and say thank you. You know what I mean? Like,
no. I mean, there are some people that want to just use the lineups, but what I tell people is that the exposures down at the bottom and the edges, those are what you should be using. And those tell you a lot of information about what players are over or undervalued. That's the big thing with the contest sims is most people who I tell you.
Give me an example of that. Like, show me what you mean.
Yeah. So what you're looking at here is the overall exposures of players that were used and found in the winning lineups based on the simulations. So Brandon Miller, his projected ownership is 35%, but he was found in 65.6% of winning lineups based on the simulations, meaning that from a recruiter standpoint, he's 30% under-owned. Now, if he ends up at 60% owned, there's less edge in rostering him in your lineups. But as of now, based on ownership projections, he is vastly undervalued. Whereas somebody like Diabate, who was, projected for 35% ownership, but only shows up in 25% of winning lineups, his edge is -9%. That doesn't mean you can't use Diabate, but it means that if you're going to use him, you should probably pair him with somebody who has at least plus 10% edge so that you can maintain neutrality in the lineup. That's my approach to building with these things. And then what I also do, especially for Showdown, is I'll take those exposures and I'll set them as an exposure cap in the solver or in my optimizer. And then I'll make sure that I don't have more of those players than the exposure in the winning lineups. I use it as an optimality rate.
The data that is going into these inputs that then generating the sim results, are those the projections coming from the range of outcomes tab?
Yep.
So if you wanted to just, double check, what's going in here, you would go back to NBA range of outcomes, and make sure this is all right. And it's going to be using this median and ownership somewhere.
Yep. Scroll down and scroll to the right. If you close that sidebar on the left, there's a little X on the sidebar. That's a hand builder, like a quick builder. If you click that X, then it'll collapse it.
Where is it?
Over on the left, that X on the quick builder.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
And it's going to be based. Now I'm guessing that depending on whether you select large or small tournaments you want to sim, it'll pick the correct, the indicated ownership from this column to this column.
Yep. At the very least, it should. It looks like it was picking up Brandon Miller's 35% there. So that looks like it's a bug, but it should pick in that small ownership.
Okay.
For a small field. Oh, no. You ran large field. So yeah, that's right. Yep.
I did. Okay. So sim stuff seems, that's something I didn't even know. Not that I didn't know existed. I just didn't think that it was so simple. In other words, when I got back to that first page, I'm like, okay, it's a sim thing. What do I have to do now? And the answer was nothing. I just had to just run it. I thought that we had to upload the projections or download them from this point or something. It already has them running in the background. Okay, that's pretty interesting.
And if on this one, if you go to the optimals there, which is right next to range of outcomes, you'll be able to use this as a pseudo optimizer. So this is just downloading straight from that database and showing you the top overall lineups and projection and ownership. And then if you export this is actually importable into DraftKings.
Did I have to do this, or did this run because I ran a sim, or is this automatically there?
Automatically there.
Okay. So when you just come to the site, you go to range of outcomes, you'll see the projection, the breakdown, or whatever, and the optimals. Like again, if you just wanted to just fire something in cash at the last minute or whatever it is, these are something you could do, and it'll say what the projection is based on the optimals. How often does I guess this is more relevant for NBA, but for all of them, how often do the range of outcomes or inputs or whatever you want to call them update?
So it's tiered. In the morning, I'll run it once, and then after afternoon, workouts and shoot around and everything like that, run it again. Then I'll run it again about 3 p.m. Eastern-ish. Update periodically throughout the day, and then in that last hour up until lock, it updates every 15 minutes. I'll try to run manual ones if I need to, but for the most part, we try to run on that 15-minute schedule. And what I tell people all the time, if you can ignore that first game in modern day NBA DFS, you absolutely should. I'll do another update about 5 minutes after lock to try to catch anything that happened in the last 15 minutes. But like that first game, it's always so sketchy because we don't know at this point with the changes in NBA injury reporting and how shitty it has become. We're getting updates every single day, the last 20 minutes of something that's probably going to open up value. So I always tell people there's probably going to be a little bit of value that opens up. Ownership won't catch up in the last update for the most part. So that 605 update is pretty important too.
I encourage you, I guess from as input from a user, to have some indication of what this is as of, like at what time this is showing. Maybe it's there already.
Click the range of outcomes tab.
Oh, there it is. Last update. Great. Okay. Because I always like to look. Okay, so XYZ was ruled out. Do you think that this thing incorporates that? Well, I sort of have an idea at least when XYZ was ruled out. So okay, this is great. Now, does this, again, how much time do you have in the day, and how much, how does your backend work? Does this update throughout the night?
So yes. We do end up putting out some very rough projections overnight. But it's not something that is as good as like the 8 a.m. Eastern run that I usually.
No, not overnight. I mean throughout the slate, like at like 9:30 p.m. for example.
As news breaks, yes, yeah. I'm running it on a 15-minute timer, basically starting at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Great. So you have it, I would say automated, but do you have it set that if someone gets ruled out, it's going to know what to do? And if
it's not fully not fully automatic. It is running on my computer at home, but I have it set up on a different desktop running on my local rig. The only reason for that is setting this up in the cloud would be super expensive.
Right.
And I just don't care to have that running in the cloud right now.
And do we have the technology yet on Paydirt to do late swap in any form, either changing lineups or projecting new lineups or anything like that?
Not yet. No. So I use the solver as a portfolio optimization solution.
Okay.
I have a partnership with them. So I usually ask subs if they really, really want to put together portfolios, like go use the solver. I think that they do a really, really good job. Paydirt is, as much as I can build optimizers, I don't like building optimizers. I think other people do a really good job at it. So if there's enough, if there's enough people that are asking me to build a full optimizer solution, then I will next year, but I don't have it yet.
Do you have a deal where you send people to the solver and stuff?
Yep, I have an affiliate with them.
Do you have it on the site too, or no? No, not on the site.
No, I don't. I should. If you go to the members tab and go to about us, it'll show all of the different things that I have. If you go down on this, and you'll see, we have partnerships with Solver, Fantasy Life, and DraftKings. But I should put like somewhere that if you want to use an optimizer, go use the solver. Here's the code.
Yeah. And one of these days, again, because I've spoke to the other, a couple of other sites that use the solver. I just literally have never used it. So I just don't know how to use it. But like anything else, so much, especially in the NBA, is about speed and being able to do your stuff in quickly. That the more muscle memory you get, the more lineups you build, and that's why I'll build stuff during the day, even though I know I'm not going to use them, just for the practice of doing it. You know what I mean? I'm not like the 18-year-olds that can just blast away. And so to know where to click and whatever, even using the solver or whatever optimizer you use, be able to actually execute your plan is just as important as knowing what the plan is.
Yeah.
Right, so as soon as we went through the DFS range of outcomes, again, you could export this if you want to use it for your own, aggregation or to put it into the solver or whatever optimizers you have.
Yep.
And as far as just kind of eyeballing it, tell me again what LevX is. Is that just the difference between ownership and exposure? No, that's not.
Not that simple. It also utilizes top finish rate and 20+%. And I'm pretty sure in the NBA one, it also utilizes GPP percentage. It's different. It's bespoke for each different sport, but it is basically a measure of upside versus ownership.
Okay. Now this is not particularly relevant to NBA or football, which we'll do in a minute, but sports like League of Legends and MMA and stuff, and whatever, where dupes are a big deal. Do you have anything within the Sims or anything that will predict dupes, or not yet?
Not yet, but I have the technology for it, right? I literally built a model to project out dupes for the theory DFS.
Okay.
So it's in the plans to recreate that. It wouldn't be that hard. I also want to do kind of I want to build some things that revolve around review and uploading contests,
Right.
and doing more of that kind of stuff, because I do think, that there's support for that stuff in the industry, but not much. There's really not that much. Like I think that being able to put together something that would be able to tell you things like how often you were duped and what your win equity was, right? Like I've built some algorithms that are able to tell you what percentile you're likely to finish in based on the ownership of your lineup, things like that. I have other stuff that can kind of tell you things about lineups before you run them that I think would be really useful. And then also being able to upload a contest that you were in and seeing how often you were duped and see how often the best players were duped, how much exposure to top 1% players they had versus the field.
Well, that's easy. I mean, there are sites that have that right now. That like right in the middle of the slate, you could upload that. Yeah. That you could scrape pretty easily, actually. So all right, what else do we have?
Really quick, while you're on this one,
yeah.
I wanted to point out that if you're using this on your phone, it can be pretty cumbersome because of all the columns, which is why I created that what view would you like to display, which is right below load reset data. If you click simple on that, it'll just show you medians and ownership.
Where are you?
So right below load and reset data in the app.
Oh, I'm not in the app right now.
Yeah, you are on the page, like right there.
Oh, not on my computer. Oh, you say app. Okay. So where do I go?
So up above that blue box where you see advanced and simple, right below load reset data.
Okay.
So if you click simple on that, it'll just show you a really parsed down version.
Okay.
So this is really nice for mobile, where you just want to see what's a player's median, what's their GPP percentage, and what's their ownership. For somebody on the fly that's just kind of looking and wanting to see who they should play, I wanted to create that so they would have it.
That's a leak of a lot of sites, actually.
It is
the mobile.
Yeah,
the mobile.
It was a big ask. People were excited about that when I built that in.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go back then. NBA. Now I presume the rest of this stuff is kind of like just research, right?
No. So the DFS Pivot Finder. If you go to that really quick.
Okay, let's see.
Pivot Finder is actually an underutilized tool and something that I think is really interesting. So say that you have, I'm gonna bring up NBA on my screen really quick so I can like put in a little query. So say that you're looking at the slate and you see that, Moussa Diabate is going to be 30% or 30% owned, 66% in small ownership in small field, right? So say that you wanted to see how good of chalk he was. Like, should I actually be playing him? Is there somebody else that I should play? That's why you would use the pivot finder. So down on the left where it says select player to create comps.
Yeah. So let's say that we think Brandon Miller is over owned or something like that. Let's say so Brandon Miller, and then you just literally just click simulate appropriate pivots.
Yeah, so this is going to tell you the base stats are going to be anywhere within $300 or within $300 plus or minus of Brandon Miller, and within 3 median fantasy points of Brandon Miller. So you can think about that of, okay, are there any players that are projecting similarly enough and within the price range of Brandon Miller to where I could pivot away from him? In small field, this is a really important concept. So like when we're building out our lineups for small field, the thing that you're really building is not necessarily trying to blow away the field. You're fine with eating a whole bunch of chalk, but you do want to find some relative value. So what you can do with this is you can find that relative value relatively easily. You can go through, and if you even want to do top X owned, you can do the top 5 or top 10 owned players on the slate based on ownership projection and run pivots for all of them and see what pivots you can make.
For example, here we go. We'll simulate appropriate pivots.
Go ahead and click it again. It looks like it slipped up for a sec. There you go.
Yeah, it's always running over here.
So no, there are no appropriate pivots to Brandon Miller. He's way underpriced at 7,400. There's nobody within a median range of him that makes sense. So he would not be somebody that you would really want to pivot off of.
So we'll try somebody else. We'll try LaMelo.
And so LaMelo Ball has LeBron James, who's within $300 and projects right there in terms of median.
So
and the ownership on LeBron is only 2%.
So is it now replacing your lineups with LeBron or no?
No. So this is meant to tell you who you could pivot away from and set rules in your optimizer.
Okay.
Or in your hand builds, right? So if you hand build a lineup and you see what I tell people to do for small field is to build a lineup with a lot of ownership. Start there because you want to lower volatility in smaller fields. And then go to the pivot finder and run through your lineup and say, who can I get away from to find relative value? So if you built a lineup that had a lot of ownership, and then you just said, okay, well, that's a lot of ownership. I'm going to get off of LaMelo Ball. Who can I get off of for LeBron James? And then you can just make that swap. Or in an optimizer, what I do in the solver is what you can do is if you run the top X owned, so go down there and run the top 5 owned on the slate. So on the left, that top X owned, click that button. Scroll down a bit.
What am I looking for?
Right now it says single player. It's the button right below that.
Oh, top X owned. No, what does X owned mean?
Just top 5 owned, top 10 owned. How many players?
I see. Okay.
So, and then I would change the acceptable median or the acceptable salary range to 500 on that.
And then
and then go ahead and simulate the appropriate pivots. So then it's going to tell you which players it's going to want to run. Yeah, it's showing that for some reason, but then there you go. Finish on Brandon. So now what it's going to do is it's going to show you when this is done, a table of all of the appropriate pivots that you can set up. And then what I like to do is in the solver, set up a if then, and if the lineup contains any of the top 5 owned players on the slate, force at least one of the players in this alongside them, right? So that way you're forcing in some relative value on top of, if you have these 5 owned players, replace one of them with one of these guys.
Right.
Okay. So if you sort that by pivot source, because you can sort the tables as well based on whatever you want to sort. Just click on pivot source. Yeah, there you go. So now you can see, Delano Banton has those 4 guys that you can pivot to. Or Jonathan Isaac has all of those guys, right? Like Jonathan Isaac looks for the most part like really bad chalk. He has a whole bunch of guys around him that project very similarly. So there's probably not much reason to continue to eat Jonathan Isaac chalk if you have a small field or a single entry lineup. And you can go through that. And so if a lineup has, and look at all those for Diabate.
Yeah.
Like you can play basically anybody except for Diabate. So that's what I like to do. I think the top 5 owned function for this and because this exists for NFL as well. I think this is an underutilized tool.
Yeah, I like this. This is not bad.
And you can export that table. So you can create an exports, a pivots list.
Oh, I see. That's pretty. That is good research, actually. That is not bad. Okay. Paydirt showdown range of outcomes. I presume this is similar. Wait, what is this? Oh, we did this one already. What is America's numbers? I don't even know what this is. What is America's numbers NBA?
So American Numbers works with me at Paydirt. He's on
that's the name of a person. I thought that was like a site. Okay.
No. He works with me at Paydirt. He does a lot of data work for me and helps me out with all different connections. And his NCAA and NBA models are really, really popular actually over on Twitter. He has been running mostly season-long stuff, but also does, slate-specific stuff. And so I thought that it was a good idea to have both of our models together for people who wanted to see his stuff and then people who wanted to see mine. So his stuff is mostly going to be based around game betting and props. His stuff is not utilized as much for DFS.
Okay. All right. NBA. Oh, so this is that's so funny. This is America's numbers. And here's your betting stuff in case people wanted to dive into that.
Yeah.
And do you have? So this is your edge, the win percentage.
That's the win percentage, and then you can see also over under and projected spread. You can see what the Vegas spread is.
Did you test any of this stuff? I mean, you guys following this do well?
Yeah. I test all of it. Currently, let's see. Go test this. So currently, the spread record in November is a 61% win rate overall.
Wow.
And then the money line is 65% overall. And if there's a spread of 5 or more, the money line has a 70% win rate. Over the last 7 days, money line has a 66% win rate overall and a 74% win rate over spreads over 5. And over the last 7 days, so over the last week, we're hitting 66% of spreads.
You do anything with the pick 'em or the pick 6 or anything like that?
I loved pick 6 until they absolutely ramped up their fucking rake. Now they're at like a 40% rake, and it's just hard for me to justify.
Okay. Well,
there's other things in this betting model as well.
Yeah, let's see.
So you can go in the prop market will show you just player props across the different markets. So that's pretty useful for research as you're going through. And then there is the prop trend table. Prop trend table will tell you some information about how well players have performed based on what their prop is over the last 5, 10, and 20 games, as well as what their last 10 average is for that stat. Matchup boost, stuff like that. And then the stat-specific sims will actually let you simulate out props based on source, or you can just run all of them if you want to against all the different books. But if you select like FanDuel for the book, for instance,
let's have some fun. Let's use FanDuel.
And then if you just want to simulate all the props, then go ahead and just hit the simulate prop category, and then it'll run through all the props on FanDuel.
How long do you think that would take? Let's do. Let's do.
It's pretty quick. It's not that. It doesn't take that long if you just select one book. If all the books takes about 15, 20 seconds or something like that.
So it's comparing your projections to FanDuel's line?
Yep. And then it'll tell you edges.
Wow. This is very and will it say, well, I didn't even know you dealt with this at all. And will it also scan? No, this goes backwards. I was going to say it doesn't identify the book with the best. Does it identify the book with the best edge for you?
If you ran all the books, yeah, you only ran FanDuel. So if you run all the books, then you can compare all the books against each other and tell you which book has the best odds.
Wow. So let's just say I wanted to bet something on player points, and I want to use all the books, right? I don't know what I want to bet, but I want to do something. I want to degen something with player points, and let's just go this. Now, what I'm expecting to see is probably if I sort by edge, I guess
it default sorts by edge. So the top bet overall is the best bet.
So there's the top bet overall be William Hill's. Their prop 22.5.
Yep.
Wow, this is awesome. This is literally awesome for people that bet on sports and bet on props.
Yeah,
and this is insane actually. And is this update as often as the DFS projection models update?
So props are actually running on every 10 minutes. Those are cloud-based. So those are, for the most part, up to the minute. But then, the projections will update as projections are ran on the back end. And then, over the last hour up until lock, like they'll be updated basically in sequence. So.
And are these aren't live bets as well, right?
No, not live bets. No.
Okay.
Live bets are fun, but I do not suggest that people be taking a lot of time to be doing them.
Well, my thought on that. If you can project a methodology where you can know what your EV is in your DFS lineups, and then access the prop betting markets to hedge that midstream, you're really printing. But that's really hard. Hard. Okay, that's very, very good. Do you want me to go straight to NFL?
Let's go look at the research sheets really quick, because I think the research sheets are something that people don't utilize near enough.
Where do I go?
So go to research.
NBA.
And then, so the most popular, actually, one of the most popular models on Paydirt is the defensive efficiency matchups.
Wow, that's interesting.
So that one, Jeremy King has a full handful of disciples that have come over to Paydirt simply for this model.
Really?
And what this tells you is the percentage boosts or nerfs that each position gets against individual teams based on individual stats. And then also a fantasy points per minute boost and a team fantasy point per minute boost.
Okay, so here's going to be my pushback. So what if this is not already factored into the projections?
It is already factored in, but if you wanted for, say, a coin flip situation, if you had two centers that basically projected the same, and you said, I want the one that has a better chance at getting rebounds, this model is where you find that.
Fair enough. Let's see, what else do we have in research? NBA. All right, baselines, minutes baselines.
Yeah.
So I actually like this. I fought forever about putting minutes projections up, and then I decided I was going to do it. And the reason why is I like to be able to see what the projections are based on.
Mm-hmm.
So that if I had some reason to believe the minutes had more upside than downside, like I know exactly, or the opposite, at least I know what we're starting with. So like I'm presuming what all this means, minutes baseline, is that all of the projections, I guess you probably find that on range of, can you find the minutes projections on range of outcomes as well? Or
you can find, yeah, you can find the projected minutes. This is the minutes baseline, right? So there's a little bit of work that goes in the algorithm based on some global variables, as well as based on, aggregate news and stuff like that, which is going to push the minutes one way or another. Right. It won't be significant. Most of the time, the minutes here, the minutes baseline is going to be very similar to what you see in the range of outcomes. But say for rotation players, sometimes the minutes will be a little bit different between the range of outcomes and the minutes baselines. But for studs and for starters, most of the time it's pretty similar.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. So this is interesting. Again, I like to see what the minutes are based on. You know, so that if I feel as though there's some upside or downside or whatever it is, at least I know what I'm dealing with here.
Yeah. And this model is maintained by American Numbers as well. So this goes into his game models, and it's a base of the Paydirt models as well. So.
All right. What else in research? NBA game. Oh, so NBA game logs. So is this like Popcorn Machine? Let me just see what this is.
Yeah, I do have something like Popcorn Machine, and I have something that I think is better than Popcorn Machine. So this one takes a second to load because obviously, game logs are a significantly large model. But what I have in here when we're looking at the rotations, it's going to be something similar to what Popcorn Machine has. This model also has correlation coefficients based on minutes played and fantasy points. It also has position versus opponent, which I'll talk about as well, and positional percentages. So from a high level, when you said that you don't think that Paydirt is a site that you would visit just during the day, this is something that you would do during the day.
100%. I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I were of the type that had time to do, petty theft research, like actual research of the players, and maybe even, for example, to figure out some way to even improve upon projections or just give us an idea of what's going on. This is definitely something that would interest me.
Yeah. So this one, you're going to be able to say that you only wanted to see specific stats in this, right? You could actually see those red stats. You can
add all this stuff if you want.
You can remove any of those if you wanted to. You can remove all of them to start and then just input certain ones that are in the dropdown.
This is kind of nuts, right? So this is literally the in-depth research you're looking at. And you, depending on how far in the weeds you'd want to go,
right?
Sort by touches would be kind of fun, Yeah. I don't think Paolo Banchero's going to have 79 touches tonight.
Well, no, but this is a season long.
Yeah.
So you can sort between this. This is season logs. You can also do game logs, right? So you can do game logs for specific players if you wanted to. I usually do this kind of thing, especially when I'm like back testing projections, and back testing against like prop bets and stuff like that. I'll do this for specific players. You can see the game, you can see the matchup, you can see what the team score and opponent score was, what the spread was. So like if you wanted to see something that I think is important is like Payton Pritchard for the Celtics. Looking at his season logs is not really that valuable because the only reason why you'd play him is if you thought that the Celtics were going to blow them out. So what you can actually do is you can look at the season logs for Payton, and then down there's a slider that says, is there a certain spread range you want to view? And if you select that to say only like 15 plus point spreads, then you can see what Payton Pritchard does when the Celtics blow out another team.
Right. So here's like only when there's a 12-point spread, for example. Yeah. So who gets blowout run pretty much?
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So you can do, and you can also do certain minutes range. So you can say only games with a 12-point spread where the player played more than 20 minutes. And then you can see what their game logs are for that. Or you can see what their averages are if you wanted to see the season logs too.
This is pretty deep. This is pretty good.
Yeah, this model I think is way underutilized. So within this model still, there's other really cool shit in this. So scroll up a little bit in the app and go to game rotations.
Right. Oh yeah, this looks like Popcorn Machine. Okay.
Yeah. But Popcorn Machine only allows you to see the individual game, right? Like you have to click on the game and then you can go to it.
Right.
This allows you to see, say that you wanted to see player rotations. Like you could see any game, right? For Minnesota here, if you want to see any game. But then you could also see the player rotations for, any given group of players. So you can choose individual players here.
Oh, so you want to pick like I have no idea who I wanted to pick.
Say
Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier, for example.
Yeah.
So what am I looking at? Like the red are on the get no.
So I would parse this down. If you scroll down a little bit, you can say certain date range.
Oh,
so specific dates is the last one on the bottom. And say that you just wanted to see over the last week.
Yeah, I was going to say right there or something like that.
So now you can see what their rotations are within that date range. You can also see what the spread was. You can see how many minutes they played, how many points they scored, how many fantasy points they scored. You can see all that kind of different stuff. And Popcorn Machine does not allow you to parse down to the player level. It's only at the team level. And I think this is really, really valuable.
Boy, if you're a super advanced player and kept the time to do this, this is extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is a good one.
Well, it's underutilized because who's got the time? But there are people that do, I guess.
And then the only other thing, really quick, on this model, I like talking about this model because I think that it's really
it's amazing.
Go to position versus opponent. So this one, you can see the fantasy points, average fantasy points, and how many minutes a specific position performed against a specific team. So if you wanted to say, like, we know based on the DEM research that, let's see, I'll grab you an example really quick. So based on the defensive efficiency metrics, the best matchup is centers against Washington. So if you select the opponent as Washington instead of Minnesota, and then you switch the position to centers.
So how does centers do against Washington?
Yeah. You can see what their average fantasy points were. That's the average fantasy, and what they scored in that matchup against them. So you can see how often they exceeded their average fantasy based on that game against Washington.
So Capella against Washington on the 15th, played 22 minutes. He scored 28 fantasy points, and on average, he scored 26.5. Or no?
Yeah, and on average, he scores 26.57. So he exceeded there. And so did Okonkwo, and so did Sengun, and so did Huff. And like you can see just from a glance that these guys like always exceed their fantasy points. And that's just looking at fantasy. If you below where you just selected center, if you select stats, you can see what their actual stats were in that matchup as well. I love this model. I think you could get lost in this model for like 8 hours a day.
I know. All right, let's that's pretty crazy. DFS trending and ceiling tables.
Yep. So this will tell you, this is another model that Jeremy King specifically loves. This will tell you trending baselines for minutes and fantasy points per minute. So if a player is trending up or down based on their last 5, 10, 3 games and based on their season, you'll be able to find that here. Specifically, I like using this model for the overall and the slate specific views because it'll tell you what ceilings are included for the players.
Last 10 minutes is 5 minutes. 10 minutes. So give me an example of what I'm doing here.
So go.
Oh my God. Okay.
So here, this is the table that I like to use the most. If you sort this by ceiling value, largest to smallest, what this will tell you is based on their adjusted fantasy over like what their trending fantasy output is, how good of a value are they based on their salary for the day. So like the adjusted ceiling for Harrison Barnes is 40 fantasy points. That's an 85th percentile ceiling based on his median. Based on his trending median. So his trending median is 32 fantasy points. His trending ceiling is 40. His adjusted value is like 7x what his salary is. So that would mean that from a heuristic standpoint, he would seem like a pretty good play. It's very similar to the DEM sheets in the research stuff. This is something that I like to use for tiebreakers or last man in. I have $5,000 for last man in. Who would I like to input there? Sort it by ceiling value and take a look at who has the highest adjusted ceiling and try to plug them
in. Yeah, this is very thought provoking.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
We have to figure out how to get other people to see this, or maybe people do. So for the purposes of the slate tonight, I don't think it's even particularly relevant. I don't, we have no idea who's playing until like 6 o'clock.
Right. Yeah.
But it definitely. But what you can do, again, even though we don't know who's playing, we know who to kind of be on the lookout for. Like the Brandon Miller, the Dia, and who do we think was going to be somewhat overowned? The
Diabate and Jonathan Isaac. Both those guys looked like they had a lot of pivots. So if nothing changes from the slate here forward, if all the current assumptions are there 10 minutes before lock, right, we would know that Jonathan Isaac and Diabate are guys that we probably shouldn't have in our single entry lineup because they're going to be overowned.
I'll tell you, Jonathan Isaac, every single day that he plays at noon, I'm getting 49% of him. And by the time the slate goes off, I have 0. Like literally,
every single time. Yeah.
Him and Capella, those are the two guys that I don't know why. But that's that. Okay, do you want to transition straight to football, or do you want to break and come back in 2 minutes, or what do you want to do?
No, let's go right into it.
Okay. All right. So now that I know a little bit how NBA works.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go and start with NFL. Now, again, if I wanted to just go to NFL range of outcomes, same as before.
Yep.
I could just kind of go here and download my stuff and do whatever. Now, with respect to football, from this spot, can you do like stack stuff or not really?
You're looking at stack stuff. So if you click that X on the quick builder, just close that sidebar. We can talk about the sidebar here in a sec, but this is going to tell you that the first thing that you open up, because my philosophy when it comes to NFL is we should be focusing on stacks, not players. Yeah. So the first thing that's going to tell you is I run the top 3 overall QB +2, and I run them through simulations on their own, right? So this is separate of the range of outcomes for the players, but this is simulating the stacks against each other of those 3 players. So it's going to tell you who the top overall median, ceilings, top finish percentiles, all the different stuff that you would see based on the range of outcomes algorithms that I have for stacks. So your starting point could be, who do I want to plug in for my QB +2? And here it is. The top one overall is Goff plus Brown plus Williams. And then we have Tua, Hill, Smith. And then we keep going down. If you wanted to sort this based on value, you would sort it based on that 4X percentage over on the right. And that's going to tell you who the best value stack is going to be. So the one that has the highest median based on their combined salary. So this is the starting point, is looking at stacks.
Okay, so now can you have it look at for QB +3s if you want?
You can do QB +2 or QB +1 over in the stack finder, which is another model that you'll find.
Okay.
And those you can do some other really cool things like accounting for ownership in that model. So if you want to go talk about that model first, we can.
No, we'll get there. But the default one here is QB +2.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now again, same thing as before. If you were on mobile, if you wanted to go to simple,
there you go.
You can go here and get this. Advance with this. Okay. All right. Betting models, I presume, is going to be similar. Well, we'll get back to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. Show me what you were going to show me about the stacks, and then we'll get back to the sims again.
So
stack finder.
Yep.
Okay, so we go into Stack Finder. Let's just pretend that I didn't know what I was doing. Let's say I didn't have you with you, and I just kind of like stumbled across this.
Yeah.
See what I would see. Okay, main slate, DraftKings, full slate run, all positions. Oh, what type of stacks am I analyzing? Well, I want to analyze QB +3, but let's just say, can you analyze them all or no?
So you choose QB +1 or QB +2.
And then just run analysis?
And then just run analysis.
So at that point, you can't do QB +3. All right.
No, but if you'd like QB +3, I can build that. One of the nice things about working with me is that I'm small and agile, and I build all this stuff myself. So like, if you want a QB +3 option, I can have that built in like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's easy. So this is the best QB +1 options. Oh, by the way, Drew Lock is starting. But so these are the best QB +1 options
with regards to ownership. So that's a really important caveat.
Okay.
So what this is doing is not just simulating the lineups again or the combos against each other. It's also saying, based on the projection and based on the ownership, we don't want anything that has higher ownership than the model above it if it doesn't have higher projection. So that's why when you see it goes from Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown, notice that we don't have Caleb Williams in this stack, in these stacks. It's because Caleb Williams plus any of his wide receivers is over-owned based on their projection. So this will give you the lineups that, based on their projection, have appropriate ownership.
Okay. And then we can export these, etc. Let's look at QB +2. And is this going to rate them in a similar way that range of outcomes one we just saw? Or this one is dealing with ownership and the other one wasn't?
This one is also dealing with ownership. Yep. So
what about that original page we were on range of outcomes where it was displaying them? Was that listing them by ownership?
No, that one would list by median. That one's just telling you information about the projections. This one is actually trying to help you make informed decisions based on ownership.
Well, this one is actually ranking them by ownership. Is that by accident?
it's ranking them by projection, but the ownership is going down with projection, which is how we want things to work, right? We don't want anything that say that you have, you have Tua plus Tyreek plus Jonnu Smith, right? It projects for 45 with an ownership projection of 63. If the next one down projected for 44 fantasy points, but had an ownership of 85%, you would just cut that one out. You don't actually want that one. Like, the ownership is too high based on the projection. So this one stack ranks based on projection and ownership at the same time. So you will see them sort down equally.
Okay. All right. So now, the difference between the Paydirt NFL DFS optimizer. So let's take a look at this. So I wouldn't do this, but no, I don't know why anybody would do this as opposed to just running the Sims if it's the same, unless you need a separate account to run Sims.
Nope, I would agree with you, and people should just run the contest Sims.
All right, so you can do
that. Like I said, I can build optimizers. I don't put a lot of my full effort in optimizers. I use the optimizer for cash games when I do my cash game right now. The default run on the Paydirt optimizer is actually based on cash and optimizes on ownership rather than projection.
What sports aside from basketball and football are you running Sims for?
NHL and League of Legends, and
NHL also and League of Legends as well. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe one day there'll be a League of Legends slate again.
Yeah, one day we'll get another one. But yeah, so there's contest sims for NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, League of Legends. I'm going to also add CSGO here pretty soon. That one's really easy. I just haven't done it. The only reason why I don't have it for PGA is because I think that contest sims for a sport like PGA are kind of not super useful. And I don't have MMA on the site. Otherwise, I would say the same thing.
Why do you say that about golf? I'm just curious.
So it would work okay for a no-cut event, but for a cut event, the distribution is weird.
Yeah, you really have it in it for these guys that aren't going to make the cut. I mean, you really hate these guys.
Yeah, well, you and I have talked about the PGA models before, but that is it's one of the things where it's like when you're thinking about the way to model for it, like the range of outcomes model for PGA is weird enough as it is because you have to account for cut percentages, and so if you were to try to put that into contest sims, like your distribution ends up bimodal some percent of the time, but like the thing about contest sims is you have to have an understanding of the way that the distribution works. And I have a really, really good understanding of how to work distributions for NBA, NHL, NFL, all these different sports, all the main sports. But when it comes to PGA and MMA, the distributions are fucking weird. And I think they're hard to wrangle. So I think that maybe there are ways to build a decision tree model, I guess. I think that's what SaberSim has said that they do, and I don't have any reason to doubt them. But I think that it's really hard to do and do well.
So this is the same sim page. It looked like NBA.
It is the exact same framework. Yep.
Now for a Thursday slate,
yes.
What do we put? Small, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead and do small. Let's simulate the
low average because it's the Thanksgiving slate.
Yeah, there you go. That'll work.
DraftKings main slate, and I presume that it's going to default to whatever the next slate is. So this will be up, and then when Thursday's slate is gone, then everything will go to Sunday stuff.
Yep, exactly.
And when did we'll talk about the showdown in a minute. Oh, hold on, let's just run this now. Do you have showdown stuff for NFL?
Yep.
Okay, we'll look at that in a minute. So this looks very similar to what we did before.
Yep.
That was really fast.
Yeah. Right.
I actually would be suspicious about it being so fast.
Remember, all the heavy lifting is happening when I'm creating the projections.
That's right. I keep forgetting that you're not dealing with new inputs that I'm putting in. Okay, that's yeah. This has been done already. Okay. Oh, so here's a dumb question. So I come here and so we haven't put any randomness in, I imagine. So if I reran this, would I get the exact same lineups?
You would not. No.
I would not. Oh, excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
So when I built this, one of the mistakes early on, and I think it's still happening in the industry, is that industry standard contest sims, and I'm going to put quotes around industry standard contest sims here, we're basically just optimizing a shit ton of lineups and playing them against each other. And my stance was that's not simulating a contest. Because here's one big thing. Contests have duplicated lineups. You can't do that if you just optimize a shit ton of lineups. Like, it won't give you a duplicated lineup. 2, lineups in a lot of contests fucking suck.
Yep.
Right?
That's the
so
problem.
There's some amount of lineups, so 10, 15, 20% of lineups in a contest that are trash. You have to account for those. You can't do that with an optimizer.
Yep.
So this is built, and the third thing, every time that you simulate a contest, there is never ever any guarantee that that contest will run out the exact same way. So this seed frame technology, the way that I have built this out, tries to account for all 3 of those things. You will find duplicated lineups in the seed frame. You will find shitty lineups in the seed frame, and you will not run the same contest any given time. You will get similar numbers in the exposures. You will get similar numbers in the outcomes, but you will not get the same contest any given time that you run the contest sims.
And once again, these are being ranked in what way? Just how often they appear in the winning lineups. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
And that would be win counts. Okay. And obviously, we like the fact that several of these are leaving a decent amount of money on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you made. People that are messing around with these sims is, if you're not using, I won't say accurate, because accurate's impossible, but if you're not using decent contest fields, then you're just, I don't want to say it's bad, but it's just not that great. And if you're going to use your own lineups that you're building expertly, for example, as a representation of what the field is going to do, you're not just not doing it right, because like you said, you're actually, if you do it that way, you'll end up playing like weirder lineups than maybe you need to. Mm-hmm. You only need to beat, you don't need to beat all the sharp players. You need to beat some of them. And you just needed to do well enough to beat the terrible players. So that's interesting. What I have found, by the way, is that the more projectable, though, like a sport is, the more you can just kind of like tennis, for example. I had a lot of luck. When I say luck, when I was predicting fields, to just run my lineups and just presume that the field was going to do something similar, just because tennis projections are so easy to do that and you look at the ranges between the different tennis projection sources, if you could find them, it's like within like a half a point of each other. And what I did when I was looking at my testing, like my lineups, like my just initial 2000 lineups, so close to like the actual ones that you can use those. But when you have a sport like football that is such, as you put it, so first of all, so many ways to play, right? So many different ways to stack, so many different ways to approach it, and so many different levels of play. Tennis, everybody's pretty decent, and they all have the same projections, and there's no correlation. You know what I mean? Like, it's not difficult to figure out who the hell people are going to play. But football, I mean, you can have an idea what people are going to play, but you don't know really what the bottom end of the feeding tube is going to play.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point that anybody's listening here should be.
Yeah, like if you download that data export like you did before, and you go to the bottom of that,
you're gonna get like my lineups.
you'll get some of the worst fucking lineups, and like in the data export, not just in this full frame. This one will give you some bad lineups, but probably not very many, because this just simulated out a small field. Right. It's just 1,000 lineups. If you do the data export and you sim and you go all the way down, you're gonna find lineups that are projected for like 75 fantasy points or something. I mean, like really trash lineups. So I thought that was a really, really important thing to do.
All right, let's go into
Really quick, while you're on this one, I did want to point out a difference between this one and the NBA one. So if you scroll down to the bottom in those exposures, so this one you can actually see based on position, which is important when we're thinking about that for quarterbacks, especially for a slate like tomorrow. Caleb Williams projected 24% ownership, exposure 45% in the winning lineups. Positive edge there, negative edge on Jared Goff. Like with NBA, there's no real way to do that because multi-positional eligibility kind of gets really muddied. But with NFL and with NHL and with MLB, you can do this where you can look at specific positions. And I do think that's very valuable.
Wait till the Drew Lock stuff starts coming in here.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I mean, Drew Lock's probably a great play tomorrow.
Is he a flat 4K?
I think he's min priced. Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I mean, look, the Thanksgiving slate, the salary cap is a suggestion, not an actual cap. Like it's not if you build a lineup that actually has win equity, you probably didn't use anywhere near actual salary cap.
Like the Daytona 500.
Yeah. I mean, you're building like you should max your salary at like $49K for the Thanksgiving slate.
Yeah. So you want to take a look at Showdown here?
Yeah. Let's look at Showdown.
So where would I find that? So let's see, NFL. There it is, Showdown contest simulations.
Yeah, now you're getting it.
There you go. So let's just see. Oh my God, there are 3 different Showdown slates. Let's see how well we can do that. So it doesn't say which one I'm looking at here.
So you have Showdown, Secondary Showdown, and Auxiliary. Okay, I should probably fix that.
So this would be the first one on the list, probably.
Yes, that's the first.
This would be the Bears game.
Yeah.
So it's in chronological order, probably.
Yes.
Okay.
I should name those though. That's very fair.
So again, if I just want to be I want to say lazy, but okay. So it's small, very sharp. Well, let's give above average because I do think that people are starting to get a little wise in Showdown. So let's put a run contest sim.
And this one runs fast because it's just Showdown, so it takes like 4 seconds or something.
And then again, I'd love. So let's export this and see what we're looking at here. So these are the stats. Who cares? Who cares about the projection also? So win count. So again, this is the amount of times that it wins, but this is not like a dupe thing.
No.
So we'd have to do the things that we do to try to get different.
Well, I mean, like I said, I have the algorithm to figure out dupe counts. It wouldn't be that hard to add that in. I should probably add that in, huh?
You could try. I mean, it's not so easy. I mean, someone asked Shady how much how much he would want for his dupe estimator. He says no big deal, just 8 figures. You know what I mean? So it's I can't say it's easy to estimate the dupes. If you could figure that out, you win probably the Nobel Prize. I create a unique lineup. I could play 5 guys that aren't playing.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, but I mean, I do in theory DFS. I did create an algorithm that was pretty good.
Okay,
pretty good.
All right. So win count. I imagine this is. You'd start by probably sorting it by win count, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start, and then you could probably filter out salaries, 49,000 above or something like that. But which is good, like I'm saying, is without even like doing anything. Not too many of these are maxing out salary. See, these the ones, the $42,000 ones. This is my portfolio. These are the ones that have no chance to win. Like those, that's what you have to play in Showdown. But this is great. This is great, and you can obviously, one day. I mean, you could probably figure out a way to do it from the site, but you don't need to. So you can filter these out however you want.
Yeah.
Okay. What's this again?
So then on Showdown, if you go down to those exposures, then for this one, when I write the Showdown season, I always focus on captain exposures and flex exposures. So you can see the edge that you're offered on each individual captain in the captain spot or each individual player in the captain versus in the flex, which I think is a very important distinction. There's going to be certain guys that have much better edge in the captain spot than the flex. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, much better captain. his projected ownership in the captain is 13%. His exposure is 19%. So he has a positive edge in the captain. But if you go to flex, you can see that he is over owned in the flex. 64% projected ownership in the flex, only 53% exposure. So really, really nice information. I use that when I build in the solver so that I can build out who I want to have certain max and min exposures in each different slot. And I think it's super valuable.
Okay. So we're good with that. Any research stuff here?
Yep, there's plenty of research stuff. If you go to the research models, and you can see the NFL research sheets.
Oh, let's see what this is.
Okay. Neil, I will work on it this weekend. I'll probably have it active by Sunday. So this is going to tell you baseline statistics about a player's usage and utilization and stuff like that. So I do a lot of work over at Fantasy Life. I manage all of their data and their data migration and stuff like that. Okay. And one of the things that I was really, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Inspired by was Dwayne's utilization score, which is something that he introduced this year. And so I have in here kind of like my take on that, which is the utilization rank. If you go to season-long research, then you'll be able to see for basically the utilization rank is how good a player's role is based on their usage. So their player snaps, their rush percentage, their targets, short down and distance, expected PPR, everything like that. And I like to use this for, this is better for things like season-long fantasy for sure. But I like to utilize it, especially when I am kind of doing some research on, how valuable is a player in comparison to how much ownership they're going to have at the high end. So if you ever have a situation where you have some $6,100 running back that's chalk over somebody like Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has the 6th best role in the league of any running back. Like it's really, really good. So we should try to utilize him, who has a really good role and has a better floor, rather than some shaky $6,100 running back. I like to do that kind of stuff. Admittedly, it doesn't always make it into my lineups. But if I have coin flips, I like to use the research sheets. Research sheets are very coin flippy.
So this is interesting. So this is actually rating them by week. So it's so that's why you see like Kyron Williams showing up in a whole bunch of spots because his utilization is high every single week, pretty much. And then you get the one time that Charbonnet got the start. That's why he's
So and that's a good point to bring up though, because if Charbonnet ever does get the start again, you can look and see, the week where he got the start, he had the 3rd best role of any running back of the entire year. So
similarly to what we talked about with the NBA, like if you could look back and see how a reserve player does when he actually does get the minutes, you could search for that. You could search based on how many minutes he played and searched on, how does a player do when he is in a blowout heavy type game. You can search for that. Similarly in football, like you said, I mean, Charbonnet, how he does every other game doesn't matter. All it matters is how he does in the particular situation that he's in right now. So
yep, exactly right.
So this is you got a good site here.
Thanks, man.
and again, you have to a couple of times get into it, and quite honestly, listen, I have no idea how I'm going to go on continue to use this, but there's definitely something for everybody.
Yeah,
like in here. Okay, so articles and videos. Does this link to the various videos that you do, or is there?
So this is the blog basically. If you go to NFL DFS and betting articles, that's where I post the showdown seasons and my main flagship article. And you can always go through and read any of the ones that I have put together. And then the bakery and slate talk are for the audio podcasts, and what this will go on as well. It's just kind of a backlog of content. We really don't focus a lot on content over at Paydirt because I think that written content has a really short shelf life. And from a usage perspective, it doesn't bring as much value as creating good models. That being said, I recognize that there are a lot of people who just want to be told kind of like, hey, how should I approach this? And that's what the showdown season is, really. Showdown season does a great job of breaking down captain exposures, flex exposures, how you should approach it, what my personal lean is, who's over and undervalued and stuff like that. Like it's good content. I've won awards for writing. I think that it's not as big of a focus for me right now because I find that the models are something that people are more interested in right now.
Well, same thing. What I suggest, I'm sure the people that are listening would appreciate this too, is to have someone who is familiar with the use of the tools and plays, right? Kind of like demonstrate sort of in real time, you know, how they do that. Like when I did that thing for you the other day, you know, like when one day I'll get good enough with these own tools where I can be the person to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And just
we do have Jason who does those.
Jason plays and he knows how all this works.
Yep, he's really good. He's one of the better players that I have over at Paydirt, and he's been with me for the entire time. Basically since Slight was created. So over on the YouTube, there are plenty of different breakdowns from him. And if you go to articles and videos and you go to that dropdown and go to tutorials and model application, you can find some of his videos on how to utilize the models and how to kind of go through each individual thing. You know, looking at small field GPP's overview and some other things, going over how to utilize the showdown contests at Paydirt, stuff like that.
But I'll tell you what's very impactful is, and this I've done a bunch of times. Like I always, not always, but most of the time, I will build my lineups totally live. You know, I'll say, okay, I'm using them up. This is what I'm doing. This is the inputs I'm putting in. I don't really show the actual lineups because, quite honestly, James, I don't even look myself to see what happens. And then, like, if and when I win something, it becomes a much cooler thing to post. I built this literally live. You saw the actual process. You know what I mean? And the questions I get while I'm doing those builds are not the same. They're not. They started off people saying, "Oh, who do you like X versus Y?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. Right. But now, like, as people see me doing it more, they say, well, what settings are you using for this? You know what I mean? Or how many min uniques do you think is appropriate for this slate? Like those questions to me are interesting. You know what I mean? Like what do you think of this picture? You know what I mean? Dude, that's all in the projections. I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, so if somebody could get, you know, into the weeds with the Paydirt stuff and do something similar, I think that would be, again, I think that would be incredible. And if Jason, like you said, I don't even know what that is, but if he's a guy who plays a lot, who knows the stuff and wouldn't mind like exposing his process a little bit, I think that would be really impactful.
Yeah, we should have him do some live builds moving forward. I think that'd be a good idea.
I'm gonna run. This is extraordinarily helpful. Hopefully somebody somewhere out there had similar questions to what I had. And that's the goal for this, is to get, because this is, I mean, honestly, I had no idea what to expect when I was going on the tour of this. This is so much more in depth and so much more here than I even thought was going to be on here. That if I thought that, if I'm surprised by it, I'm sure other people would be too. So it's just a question of starting with the people that already are on the site, right? To get them to really maximize the value of it, because there's so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna clip that and I'm gonna make sure that people I'm gonna put it on, because I agree with you. And I think that what it comes down to is people, you know, you had said it, people get into a muscle memory of how they build. And so you don't go out and try to find other things. Like you use something called Ace Mind, which I didn't know about until you mentioned it. And like, I have used their site a couple times now, but I didn't know that it was there. So having this kind of stuff is really important to show people that there are other things out there.
And it's not even just, it's muscle memory. It's also, you know, time rut memory. You know what I mean? Like you have, you know, okay, this is the 45 minutes I have, and this is how it's going to be used. You know, who's just because, this is kind of a weird way to say, just because it's working doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm comfortable with my process, but just because I'm comfortable, it doesn't make it efficient. I mean, it doesn't make it optimal. You know, so that's why I always like to mess around with different ways, and maybe some part of the Paydirt thing is going to actually weave its way into my process, and I'm just real happy we did this.
Yeah, I am too. Well, I will let you get out of here. Thanks for doing this.
All right.
We'll put it out there, and I appreciate it.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bud. Yep. So that was Breakdown. Again, I'm James McCool. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Paydirt_DFS, or of course, you can go find me over at paydirtdfs.com. We have a free Discord you can join. If you would like to do that as well, you can find it over in the members dropdown, just the Discord. You can just join it for free. If you got any questions, you can find me in the Discord basically 24/7. Thank you guys for hanging out, and I will talk to you next time. Adios, dudes.